Good afternoon. You're listening to John August here on Roving Spotlight. The time is, well, pretty close to 12:30, maybe 12:31, and we should have Tanya Watkins on the phone. Are you there, Tanya?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, well, welcome. I believe you are the benevolent dictator of the Australian branch of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. Is that still your title? Is that right?
Yes, I am the benevolent dictator and also the captain.
The captain. Okay, that's certainly a pirate sort of nautical theme going on there. So
it's a large part.
That's right. So, well, okay, I suppose well, we can spend about 5 minutes, maybe a bit more, talking about the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. I think the story is people like to wear colanders. I guess we're going from the Flying Spaghetti Monster to spaghetti to pasta to colanders used to filter the water off pasta, I suppose, is the connection there.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Some people feel that to show their reverence to the Flying Spaghetti Monster, who is our deity, that they should wear a colander on their head, especially when they're having any kind of government ID being issued to them.
And that's right. I think one of the things is people try to get the photo for their driver's license wearing the colander. And so is that actually something that's happening in Australia as well? Are people managing to persuade the traffic authorities to let them do that?
It's absolutely fine in Victoria. There's been many instances in Victoria. Other states are not quite so keen on it.
Right. So I have to admit, I'm not in the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster myself. I haven't actually tried that one in New South Wales. But how would people how would people in New South Wales go with that?
They actually brought out an entire policy naming the Pastafarians as people to not allow to wear things on their heads when they have driver's license photos taken.
Because I would have thought the important thing is that you can see your face and your eyes and that sort of thing, that the nature of your hair is a bit... Because people do actually change their hair colour, change their hairstyle between the photo of the licence and when people might actually see them. So, you've got to interpret that.
Exactly. And, I mean, a gentleman with a full beard could go in and have his licence photo taken, shave it off the next day, look completely different. But apparently we're not allowed to wear colanders on our heads.
Okay. Well, tell me a bit more about where the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster came from, what you believe, what you've been up to. Tell me some stories along those lines.
Oh, well, basically, the Flying Spaghetti Monster religion was revealed to the world by Bobby Henderson when he wrote a letter to the Kansas School Board, basically asking that if they were going to teach intelligent design in science class, that they also had to teach about unintelligent design, which is the Flying Spaghetti Monster. And unintelligent design is basically, we think that our deity was just a little bit drunk one day and accidentally made the world. And that explains why everything's
a bit messed up.
Strange, yes.
Okay, so basically, it was the creation of the Earth was not intended in the way that we normally think of a deity. It was much more an accident, shall we say?
It's just an accident, yes.
Okay, and so how did you get involved, and what have you and the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster been up to?
I got involved probably somewhere around 2010. I mean, I had been looking around for a religion that fit me for many, many years, and I looked at most of them, and most of them I couldn't agree with some of their things. I found the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, and it was like, yeah, I can get with this, because it holds with my ideals that there is some kind of creator, but the creator was not responsible for what's happening.
Okay, well, there is a sentiment which is called deism, which is the idea that God may well have created the universe, but is not really the source of moral authority. It's more like someone who started the bus, put it in gear, had it careering down the motorway, and then jumped out the door. So he said, well, I've got you here, but it's up to you from this point on.
Yeah, and that's absolutely what our religion holds, is the fact that, once this whole thing accidentally happened, the Flying Spaghetti Monster is now a little bit too busy off having fun, but he can't be bothered with the rest of us.
Yes, because I know there are some Babylonian traditions which talk about when upon high, which is rather than saying in the beginning, if you interpret that very ancient language, you could say, well, God created the universe when he got around to it. And that's a different sentiment to saying it all happened in the beginning according to a well-defined plan. But again, you're interpreting ancient Babylonian texts, I suppose. It's maybe a hard thing to do at the best of times.
Oh, definitely.
Yes. Okay, because I suppose I also am aware of some of the more progressive churches. There's the Unitarian Church, but I suppose that obviously they didn't suit your needs, I guess.
No, I did have a look at them, but they still kind of had things I didn't quite agree with.
Ah, so what were the things you didn't agree with about them?
To be controversial, there's still kind of a belief that there's some kind of purpose to all this.
Okay, a belief in a purpose. All right, fair enough. No, that's a fair call, I suppose. I was just curious because they're very. I suppose, let's say, all churches claim to be relaxed. I suppose we're relaxed and we're friendly and so on, but I think they do that. But also Sunday Assembly. Now, I think the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster was on the deck before the Sunday Assembly, but you haven't been tempted by the Sunday Assembly at all.
I have attended quite a few Sunday Assembly meetings, and they're lovely people, and I agree in the most part with what they do, apart from this early Sunday morning stuff.
Well, I suppose that's the thing about be it the Unitarian Church or the Sunday Assembly. They're trying to claim an alternative to regular church going, so
this is true.
That's a sentiment. I know the humanists do actually meet on Sundays. We sort of have claimed that time, but certainly in Sydney it tends to be about 3 or 4 p.m. on a Sunday, and probably the same in Adelaide, I suspect.
Yeah, I did convince them to change it to the afternoon. But, I mean, the thing I love about the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster is Fridays are our holy days. So what we do is after we've finished whatever we're doing for the day, we just go to the pub with our friends and celebrate with a beer.
Okay, well that sounds like...
Well, dressed as a pirate, but, you know.
Sounds like a jolly good approach, I think, yes.
Okay.
Well, anyway, is there anything more you want to talk about what you've been up to or what the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster has been up to? Or maybe we should talk about the Religious Freedom Bill that's sort of been discussed and the submissions for that.
I mean, one of the main things the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster has been attempting to do for the last 5 years is be registered as a not-for-profit association. Oh. And we're currently in, once again, court proceedings because for some reason they don't think we're a not-for-profit association.
Okay, well, I'd expect you would be a non-profit association, but I guess that is the vagaries of government. I think a lot of government, does favours for people that they're already impressed with, but sort of looks askance at the unfamiliar. And basically, one could say power likes power, and power likes things the way they are.
But I can tell you, we're not making any money out of this.
Yes, that's right. So, okay, well, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Though, have you had any success with that overseas, or I think in Australia it's just one thing for the whole of Australia? But
in overseas, I mean, in New Zealand, they are able to officiate weddings.
Okay.
Their laws are, the laws are different in different countries, but in New Zealand they can officiate weddings. In Puerto Rico, they are registered. Poland are currently going through the EU Human Rights Commission for their application to be accepted. Germany are having problems at the moment because they got told that they had to take their sign down advertising when their masses were occurring.
Oh, that's... how many people are allowed to put up signs like that in Germany, and how many people are restricted? I suppose probably official churches can, I suspect.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not over all of the laws in Germany, but from what I understand is that, if you have a religious congregation and you have a regular meeting, then you can put up signs in your town telling people when and where it is. but the German Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster was told that they needed to take their signs down.
Oh. All right. Well, look, unless you want to say a bit more about the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, maybe we should move on to the Religious Freedom Bill. So,
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. I know the Religious Freedom Bill they're requesting submissions. I think they close at 5 p.m. tomorrow.
Yeah.
I know the Australian humanists have been putting together a submission, and I think you've had a bit of an interest in that. I've been putting something together. But, what are your concerns about the Religious Freedom Bill? And if you need some help, I can talk about some of my concerns.
Well, one of my major concerns is Section 41, which purports to override every other Commonwealth and state discrimination bill in favour of the religious discrimination bill, because that gives an inordinate amount of power to a religious belief over any other form of discrimination.
Well, the other side of things is it's not just discrimination, but the privilege to speak out. And if you speak out in a religious way, that is given preference over any other form of speech. So, in a sense, if you wanted to spread the good word of atheism, you'd just be speaking out as anybody could be. But if you were spreading the good word of some particular religion, you would have a degree of privilege in the public square.
I mean, that is true to an extent, but and that's a very large concern. But if you look at what the definition of a religious belief is, it's anything.
Really? So I believe to become like a tax-deductible church, you have to believe in a supernatural power, which is actually privileging those that believe in nonsense believe in things that are not empirical or proven, as compared to people who believe in science. You're sort of, privileging people who don't believe in science.
Well, yes, absolutely. And that's a problem because, everybody has a different belief about the world. And some people base that on facts and science, and other people base that on books that were written a long time ago. That's problematic.
Because I know certainly in the New South Wales humanists and a few others, and I think it's in UN's Charters of Human Rights, we talk about the freedom of conviction. And if you talk about freedom of conviction, that covers both the religious and the non-religious. But you're saying the way this act or bill is written, it does actually allow for non-religious sentiments to be considered as statements of religious belief. Am I hearing you correct there?
Yeah, the interpretation section basically says that the definition of religious belief or activity is defined as holding a religious belief and not holding a religious belief.
Okay, goodness me. Well, I have to acknowledge that's news to me. I suppose another concern is that you are setting the religions up against each other. Like, what if somebody working, let's for the sakes of argument say that a Muslim working for a hospital that's run by the Catholic Church. And, the Catholic Church wants to control the religious parameters of this sort of organisation, this building, but then again the Muslim wants to, express their own religion as they've been given approval by law. So to my way of thinking, that could cause some problems. And there was actually the Catch the Fire Ministries in Victoria, and that was, I think, the Victorian Human Rights Law, and that was the Jihad Seminar, and there was a whole lot of there's a whole extended legal battle around that, as I recall.
Yeah, I'm unfamiliar with that, but you're correct in saying that it's going to pit beliefs against beliefs, in the fact that we're going to have to, if this bill passes as it is, have judges deciding whose belief is more valid, which is very dangerous territory.
Well, the thing is, I suppose if we're thinking about Israel Folau, who was saying that, I guess, homosexuals and others were destined for hell, and then there's people saying, it was unfair that he was, had difficulties with his employment law. But to my way of thinking, you could still say that is a statement that is vilifying people, and that the statements that vilify are not, are not given exception under this law. So you can't actually vilify someone and say, "Oh, I'm expressing my religious beliefs."
I mean, that's also another issue. I mean, where does it go from ridicule and harassment into vilification?
Yeah.
Which is once again going to be something that's going to have to be dragged through the courts to decide, which is going to be a huge waste of resources.
Yeah, well, I suppose the thing is that there is I don't know what's the force behind this, that somehow religious people are marginalised and oppressed. But, I mean, I look around and I see a degree of privilege of Christianity, that there's so many politicians that are strong religious believers, which is not representative of the views of the greater community, that a lot of laws have been held up by people with those sorts of religious beliefs, which is not representative of the broader community. And that I see religion in our current world having a great deal of privilege, and it's just that one person said some obnoxious things and now they claim that, this is an affront to the whole nature of, an individual wanting to believe. So I just say, there's just so much, there's just basically so much religious privilege in the world, and that there's nothing really to react to because the religious are already privileged.
Oh, they are definitely incredibly privileged because they get, in this country, tax exemptions, they get massive amounts of government funding, etc., etc. But I think they're worried because they are becoming a minority in this country, and they're worried about that because, historically, minorities are not treated well.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see. I suppose, is there anything else? We've got about 3.5 minutes left. Is there anything more you want to add? I mean, we can wind things up now if you like.
Well, if we want to keep on going about the religious discrimination bill.
Yeah, we've got a few more minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, basically, there's two other pieces of legislation that come along with it. And one of those pieces of legislation basically wants to add the fact that all human rights are equal to them. The Human Rights Legislation Amendment, Freedom of Religion Act. And that would be a great idea if all of the separate pieces of discrimination law actually put that, all human rights are as equally valid as the other, and they need to be balanced.
Yeah, well, that is one of the things, the way that I relate to human rights is that there are going to be situations where the different rights are going to be in tension or are going to be in conflict. And I think the way that a lot of arguments are run is for someone to identify some right and then say, look, I have this right, so you get out of my way or you do X, Y, Z because I have my right. And then you sort of think, well, hang on, there are other rights that actually interact. It's not the case of you just have one right and that's it and that trumps everything else. Because I guess the rights are, in a sense, in dialogue and discussion with each other, I guess you might say.
Oh, absolutely. There's got to be checks and balances, but you've got to make sure that all are considered equally. Right.
So I wonder, I mean, based on talking to you, is this bill going to be that much of a problem? I mean, my gut reaction is that the religious are already privileged in Australia, and this is just enhancing that privilege. And I think while you were saying that the religious are becoming a minority, but I mean, what's your overall viewpoint? As I say, I'm a bit puzzled whether this is overall good or bad. I tend to think it's just causing problems and muddying the water. But what do you think?
I think that overall it is a absolutely terrible idea to have a Religious Discrimination Act put into law. What we really need is a Bill of Rights for every single right that's been put down in international law to be considered equally.
Yeah, well, that's right. I tend to think, quite apart from the fact that you can identify some good things, just the whole way this is going about to say, look, here's religion, let's beef up religion, rather than saying, look, here's a bundle of rights, let's just beef up the bundle of rights and try to get our head around these things in a better way.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's really concerning is that they're actually attempting in this piece of legislation to give human rights to organisations.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Not in any piece of international law do they say that human rights actually belong to organisations.
Yes, well, I think that would have been something worth discussing in a bit more detail, but I think we have run out of time. But Tanya, thank you very much for calling in. I do appreciate it.
All right, it was great chatting with you.
Okay, I'm sure we'll get you on the program again in the future, and we'll see what we can come up with.
Okay, I look forward to it. Thanks for talking to me.
No worries. Okay, see you, Tanya. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so that was Tanya Watkins, captain of the Australian Pastafarians.